Hello and welcome to the latest Crafty Simulations video. On today's video I feature a brown Cessna. So welcome back to the channel, welcome back to a nice brown Cessna. So we've featured on this channel before Carenado aircraft, and I've always had a bit of a soft spot for Carenado aircraft. I think they do fill a niche in the flight simulator catalogue of aircraft, because not only do they have a varied collection of general aviation aircraft, which makes my channel better, but it also fills these are not so expensive, but they're very good aircraft in the flight simulator collection. Now, obviously, the main thing that people are going to judge these aircraft on is probably going to be the price point, and the price point of Carenado aircraft is the best part. They're not bank breakers. They're actually really, really good money, good value for money even, and they still look the part. They're still functional in the avionics and the cockpit, and they're believable. They have good sounds. Flight characteristics can be a little bit, I don't know, I don't want to say pasted and copied or copied and pasted from previous aircraft, but they are sort of believable. I haven't found an aircraft yet that felt, this is a bit different. This is a rocket ship when it should be a little Cessna. But I think they're actually really, really good. So we've featured Carenado aircraft before on the channel, so there's going to be a lot of stuff in this aircraft that have been featured before on other aircraft. So what do we have before you here? Well, we have the Cessna C182 RG2. And yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful, but basically you see behind us this aircraft here. That is a normal, what people would say, Cessna. And the difference between that Cessna and this Cessna is we've got a folding undercarriage. So this Cessna becomes sleeker, faster, more fuel efficient, and it's actually, I don't know whether that's actually put in the flight simulator, but it is a different style of Cessna. So we do have folding undercarriage, something I need to remember, because I'm flying a Cessna and it's not normal and I'll probably forget it. And there is a few other Cessnas that I can think of off the top of my head, and it's Skymaster, I think, the one with the two engines, one at the front, one at the rear. By the way, Carenado also do that Cessna as well. Guess what will be coming in the channel later on. So yeah, we do have, like I say, folding undercarriage, but it is, like I say, a normal-ish looking Cessna. And this is the thing about Carenado, they do look really, really nice. I mean, I know a lot of these aircraft will be, they're not ports of previous Sims versions of aircraft. Yes, Carenado have been around since FS9 days, I want to say, 2004, and FSX definitely. But these aircraft have been seen before in other Sims, but I think they are from the ground up Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and 2024. I think they're compatible with 2024. Don't quote me on that. It will say on the website. Linked below to the actual website for the actual product. But in 2020, they do look really, really nice. Great reflections. And considering the price point, I think they're very believable. I mean, you know, you've got the rivets and all these bits and pieces that connect the tail on, and it just looks believable. These things here, I can't exactly remember what they are. Static probes? I wanted to say they're static probes, or static something or other to get rid of static off the airframe. But they shake in the wind flow. They're loose. They are supposed to be loose in reality, but there's so many aircraft that get put into the flight simulator, and they have these things here that serve no purpose in the flight sim whatsoever, but they're solid. They don't move in the airflow. And Carenado here, these will shake. The airframe will shake as it sits on the ground and it's idling, and the engine's, you know, running. It will, the wings, you'll see them shake up and down, left to right. It makes the aircraft believable, and that's what a great thing. It's what I like to say about Carenado aircraft. They are very, very believable. Moving on to the interior now, if you've seen a Carenado aircraft, you'll know the quality they like to put out. Now, considering this is where we will be basically spending most of our time in this aircraft, it's a very believable cockpit. And I'll say right here, right now, it's not A to A levels. It ain't just flight level, it ain't black square level, but it is a believable cockpit. And it feels like a lived-in cockpit, because you have things like the dirt and the grime underneath here. This is an old aircraft. The flight column, for instance, it's showing wear and tear, which is what I would like to see. I don't like seeing aircraft that come from developers that are pristine. Give me a pristine aircraft, not a problem, but give me a lived-in aircraft as well, especially if the aircraft is of the 1970s, 80s, or whenever the heck this thing was designed. So, you know, I mean, you've got dirt in all the places you'd expect to see it. It's an old aircraft. Specks of dirt all over the place. Seats have got dirt on them, grease, grime. Oops. We do have, again, specks of dirt. Good reflections on the glass here. We do have, obviously, again, dirt, grime, all that sort of stuff. It's a believable aircraft. Something I do like to obviously look at is the seating. I know it's not something that's very important in flight simulators, but it kind of shows the way the developer went. And obviously, like I said, we're going to spend 99% of our time staring out the window or staring at the controls and the gauges and all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of flight sim companies that tend to like forget the ball, or drop the ball even, or not even have the ball when it comes to the graphics of the seating, for instance. I mean, I know obviously I would be sat in the aircraft, you wouldn't see the seats, but the leather here looks very, very realistic. I do like Carenado's attention to detail when it comes to things like this. So moving over to the actual cockpit of the aircraft, we do have, if you know a general aviation aircraft and a single engine aircraft at that, you'll pretty much know what this cockpit's all about. So we'll move on, we'll go over the gauges here. So we are flying a UK variant of this aircraft. I think there is quite a few, there's 8 or 9 repaints that come with the aircraft of differing ends of the world with differing changing registrations. There's only one UK representative here from Carenado. I do believe there will be obviously repaints available for this aircraft. Check out flightsim.to, that's my usual go-to place for repaints. So moving over to the instrumentation, we do have the standard airspeed, horizon, altitude, navigation. We have a 2 gauge here for the navigation for our OBS and heading. We have a vertical speed in feet. We have a compass, slip turn indicator. We have a clock, and if we get rid of that, we have a digital gallons used and remaining fuel flow and gallons per hour, and all this kind of stuff that just tells you a lot of stuff that is useful for how much fuel you are using, because when you run out of fuel, it's not an aircraft no more, it's a glider. I suppose with the gear up, it might actually glide quite well. Have to put that to the test one day. So, moving down to the lower section here, we do have our lighting and startup and electrics section of the aircraft. So we have our battery and alternator on a twin switch here. We have our auxiliary fuel pump. We have our mags in our usual configuration of off, right, left, both and start. We have 2 lighting doohickeys. Like levers, no, not levers, are they? Yeah, so it's just wheels we use with your mouse wheel. So we have external lighting in this here, so a nav beacon, taxi and landing, and for some odd reason, but this aircraft does not come with strobe lights. Now, I would have thought most aircraft, especially of this vintage and this area in aviation, would have strobe lights. It doesn't. So I find that highly odd. We also have the pitot heat switch here. This one is obviously the big one. This is the undercarriage lever. We do have lights to say what the undercarriage position is in. Obviously, we don't have any battery power on this aircraft because at the moment its lights are out. But if the battery was on, we would have a green gear down locked position. And likewise, it will go amber, orange, whatever that light colour is when the gear is up. So we do have our fuse panel here. Do we have another fuse panel over here? I can't remember if we do or we don't. No, we don't. So few fuses. Try saying that fast. The fuses don't work. Okay, this is not A2A's level. This is not, a lot of other aircraft have got to have fuses that work. Okay, it's not a deal breaker for me personally. I mean, if the aircraft has fuses that work, cool, brilliant, especially if they actually do affect the aircraft. I don't remember the last time I, on purpose, yanked a fuse. Accidentally, yes, the mouse may wander and you may catch a button and then you pull a fuse, yes, many times. So yeah, again, these don't work. We do have a primer. Okay, this primer does work, but remember, again, it's not an A2A aircraft, it's a Carenado aircraft. So, you know, you can run through the startup and use the primer, or you can start the aircraft without the primer, your choice. Moving over to the center console, or center portion of the console, we have the our brilliant GNS 530. I hate this thing with a passion, and the reason why I hate it is because I've seen this GNS 530 since FS 2004 days, probably even FS 2000 days. So I hate the thing, can't stand it. There is an option to change that, I will go on that in a minute. We have our comms and nav switch changing here, which will also change when we change the avionics. We have our Bendix King autopilot section. Again, this thing's been around for donkey's years. Very, very simple, very, very reliable, works with the aircraft just nicely. We have our ADF section here, never used one yet. And we have our transponder, our mechanical transponder. Now I say mechanical because, well, there's levers and switches, it's mechanical. But when we change over to our other options here, it will kind of make this pointless. Moving over to the co-pilot section, we do have some important gauges here, like the fuel gauges. So we have a left tank and a right tank. We have our ampage. We have our cylinder head temperature, again very important, oil temperature and oil pressure. Again, I'll say it again for you, it's not A2A. Okay, so yes, these needles will move and they will, you know, respond to the aircraft, and while we're on the ground, cylinder head temperature will be low. As soon as we've done our run up, the cylinder head temperature will be a lot higher, and it will go into the green. It's not a deal breaker to break this aircraft, okay, so, you know, again, it's not A2A's level. So we also have a manifold gauge here and an RPM gauge and an EGT gauge. Now, obviously these are very important, and they do respond correctly. So we'll just get rid of this. We have our flap gauge, flap lever even, 3 positions, up, approach and landing. We have our cabin air pull, cabin air, cabin heat and a defrost option. We have the traditional Cessna or GA style throttle arrangement, so throttle, propeller pitch and mixture, and it's a pull push lever arrangement, which I do not have on my Honeycomb Bravo, but it's, you know, that's realistic. So we do have a carb heat down here as well. Trim gauges, so we do have functional functional nose, all the trims, that's what I'm trying to say. And we do have the, I think that was for, yeah, that's that doohickey down here. I can't remember the life of me. My brain cell tends to go wondering what that's called. Yeah, it's opened up there, so yeah, okay. We do have a fuel tank selector. Now, again, it's not realistic, so this aircraft has been started up on the ground, and automatically we are in the both tanks position, so we would have this through to off if it was obviously a cold and dark aircraft, but being that I will forget that because that's down low, I will keep that on both. Now, one thing I did notice is when it comes to starting this aircraft up, you basically have things that go across all single engine aircraft. You have your battery, your alternator, your avionics, your lights and your startup switch or lever or whatever it is. So on this we have the battery, the alternator, we have the key obviously, and we have our lighting. Where's the avionics button? And it took me a few seconds to work this one out because airplane companies, bless them, they do like to move this and hide them and put them in different places. And basically I was looking, I mean, Piper tend to put it over here. Well, it's not over there. And let's face it, it can't be hidden too many places because there ain't that many places to hide the bloody thing. But it turns out it's this button down here. So if you want to turn on your avionics, which is obviously this stuff, obviously where the aircraft's running, it's this switch down here. So moving over to the traditional Carenado tablet we do have, just in case you forget what aircraft you're flying, it is a Carenado Cessna 182 RG2. We have our traditional options here. We have our static elements, so this will be the pitot covers. I do believe it puts a couple of traffic cones under the wings, that sort of thing. I think it may even put some covers over the windows, not 100%, don't really use it. We have external power, which is a little cart, start cart, sat down here, so we can now start the aircraft, all the electrics of the aircraft without the engine running. We have a tow bar, which is, well,
It's that thing. I wouldn't want to push and pull one of these things, but hey ho, completely and utterly useless. So we'll have that off, turn that off. We have our pilot and co-pilot. This is showed internally, so at the moment we have just a pilot. So where is he? Wave, do something, look happy, stop looking apprehensive. Yeah, he knows what's going to happen. So we can also turn on and turn off the co-pilot. That sounds incredibly wrong, but we can add the co-pilot to the aircraft. We have a pilot door, co-pilot door, and baggage door. So we do have the ability to, let's see, we can do this actually here. So we can click that, door opens. But if you want to shut the door, we do this here. That gets a little bit confusing, on, off. So let's just click that. That's now set to off. Oh, that's because I pressed that and did yes. So you can do it obviously with the levers, and the same for the passenger door. And we've got a baggage door, which is, where's the baggage door? No sound effects for the baggage door, but there is our little cubby hole for speeding ticket money. So we'll shut that and just make sure that's shut, because weirdly there's no sounds. Right, so this is the options for changing that thing, that hideous thing. So we have the options for the two Payware GTN 750s. So we have the GTN 750 and the GTN 750 XI. And these are from TDS Sim for the 750 XI and the PMS50 for the standard GTN 750. I have both of them and I highly rate the 750. So it's already showing that I've got them installed. So I'm going to have my favourite version, which is the GTN 750 from PMS50.com. Not saying the other one isn't any good, because it is. It's a 750. But I just prefer this one. It tends to work for me. I just always go with this one. Anyway, next screen we go on to our startup options. So this is how you will find the aircraft, and obviously we can set it up ourselves. So we can have the cold and dark cockpit, of which we would technically be in now. We have the ready for taxi option and ready for takeoff preset options. So it's a very simple aircraft. It ain't A2A levels. We're not having to wait around for bits and pieces to warm up. We can just click on that if you so wish and everything will come to life, or we can start it up ourselves. Very, very simple. So just click one of those, click done, away you go. Moving on to the checklists, we have a before takeoff checklist. So this is an abbreviated checklist for this aircraft. Obviously, every aircraft comes with a multi-page checklist. No matter how simple the aircraft, there's a multi-page checklist. So I have here the before takeoff checklist, which again, if you've flown single engine Cessnas or single engine general aviation aircraft, they all follow relatively the same kind of arrangement. Let's turn that back on before I forget. But we do have a checklist here for if you're not entirely sure what you're trying to do. So click it again, we have the before landing checklist. Now the only thing I would say is something that potentially has been forgotten, and I dare say has been forgotten in reality as well, is that thing there, the undercarriage lever. Even though you know you're flying a Cessna, and most Cessnas do not have folding undercarriage, I'm thinking off the top of my head, I think the other Cessna that has folding undercarriage is the Skymaster, I want to say. It's the Cessna with the pusher propeller arrangement, so it has a propeller up front, or an engine up front and an engine in the rear. And would you believe Carenado have that in their catalogue as well? That might feature on the channel as well in a future video. But that also has folding undercarriage. So we can just click that. And hopefully that goes away sometime. Who knows? There we go, it's finally. So yeah, basically that's your tour round a Cessna cockpit. And like I say, it's a very, very simple aircraft to fly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this aircraft up off camera, and I will join you when we're ready to do our engine run-up test here at, I think it's runway 21. I'm not 100% without bringing up the avionics, but yes, I think it's runway 21 here at Wickenby. Today's flight, we're going to be flying out of RAF Wickenby, but out of Wickenby, and we are going to be flying over Lincoln and back into RAF Waddington. Now, Wickenby scenery is provided by Burning Blue Designs, and Waddington scenery is provided by, I've forgotten the creator. It's a freeware version, but it's available on flightsim.to and will probably be linked in the description below, if I haven't forgotten, which I probably will have. But it's on other videos. So anyway, like I said, I will come back to you when the engine is running, and we are sat at the end of runway 21.
So welcome back to the video. We are currently sat at the threshold of runway 21. We have positioned ourselves so that the back end of the aircraft is over, well, pointing towards nothing in particular, because we're about to do our ancient run-up test, and nobody would like to walk behind an aircraft that's running on full power. So an engine run-up test is done as our last possible chance to do a check on the engine, the state of the health of the engine. Obviously this is better in reality, and more important in reality. Carenado, not so much, but it is something that I like to put into my flying, and it basically, like I say, it just checks the engine over, checks the avionics over. It's a simple thing of, you know, just running through various bits and pieces regarding in a startup. So what we're going to do, I'll run through it, what we're going to actually do before actually doing it, because I know some people will be interested in such a thing. So in a single engine aircraft, it's relatively easy. We're going to run our engine up, our RPM gauge up to about 2000, let it settle at 2000. We'll then be doing a mag check. So what we're going to be doing is, of course, we are running on both mags at the moment. We'll switch this over to the right mag, and there will be a RPM drop. This has to measure less than the maximum limit of RPM drop. This would be obviously to gauge the health of the mags and to make sure the engine is working correctly. Now we have a right mag bank and a left mag bank, and we would obviously check the RPM difference between both mags and mags in against each other. So what we'll do is, we're running on both, we'll then go to right, back to both, then over to left, back to both, back to right, to left, to right, back to both. So once that's done, we'll then cycle the propeller pitch. So what we're looking for is an immediate, or very close to immediate response. Currently sat at, like I say, when we're sat at 2000 RPM, when we dump the RPM lever, there will be obviously a loss of RPM. Once that's done, we'll cycle that a couple of 3 times. Once that's done, I do believe we would do the carb heat, because there should be a difference in the RPM when it comes to pulling on the carb heat. So we take off and land with carb heat off, and obviously if we was to pull the carb heat lever, there should be once again an RPM drop. So what we're looking for as well, apart from obviously the RPM lever, is obviously our oil, cylinder head temperatures, oil temperatures and oil pressures. Now obviously, again, it's not an A2A aircraft, it's not the most realistic aircraft in the world, but we will want to be looking at our T's and P's and making sure that in the high power settings of 2000 RPM, and as we're playing around with the engine settings, that obviously bits and pieces in the temps and the pressure section are correct. So we are currently sat with our mixture at 3/4, so we've leaned it a little bit. RPM gauge, RPM lever is full. We're now going to check that the brakes are on. Confirm brakes are on. I'm going to run her up to 2000. Let it settle, so we're looking for about 2000. There we go. So both to right, RPM drop, back to both, RPMs come back, go to left, RPMs drop, back to both, RPMs are back up again, to right, there's a drop, to left, RPM gauge stays the same. There would be a bit of a difference in reality. Back to right, sorry, yeah, back to right, back to both, RPMs come back to normal. So that's correct and working properly. Cycle the propeller pitch. Back to 2000, pull back. Back to 2000. Let's see if the carb heat works as well. So there is a slight difference there with the carb heat, so we'll put it back in. RPMs go back 2000. Engine check's complete. So we'll settle back down to about 1000. Yeah, that's about. So cylinder head temperature has come up, oil temperature is now high, well not high, but it's in the green obviously. Oil pressure, very important, is in the green. Fuel gauges are reading correct, ampage is correct. So everything else is happy. So tax lights coming off, landing lights coming on nav lights and beacon lights are all on. So we shall now just run through the last of our checks. So we are currently squawking and reporting altitude, that is correct, that's what we want. Flight plan is put in, altitude, autopilot not required. Flaps are set down for takeoff, 10 degrees. Turn Trackir back on. Now what I will say as well, this Cessna does sit a bit squat, like most Cessnas, they do sit on their main undercarriage a little bit. So if you're actually in the normal view, that's the normal view you get. So you do get a bit of left and right view, but not much over the nose. So just tap spacebar. This works for any aircraft. And it'll raise you up. Now I'm quite a tall person, so I probably would be, this is the kind of view I would be looking at if I was really in this aircraft. So anyway, everything is set. Let's run out to the runway and get going. Standard left-hand departure here out of runway 21 of Wickenby. We do have the hump 3/4 down the runway, so we will be airborne a little bit after the hump. So we're aiming to do a left-hand departure after retracting undercarriage and flaps, and we will come back over the airfield at about 1,000 feet minimum to head over towards Lincoln. So levers are correct, lights are correct, autopilot is not required, navigation is set, squawk is squawking, parking brakes off, sitting on the wheel brakes. Let's run them up and let it go. Brakes off, let's go. Over the hump. And airborne. Positive rate, gear up. Flaps going up. Pulling back the prop pitch there, throttle, bringing ourselves back into the green band. End speed's good. Positive rate of decline. Approaching 800 feet. There's 1,000 feet. And there's Wickenby. Burning Blue Designs did a fantastic job at Wickenby. Glad to use it as our home for general aviation. So starting our left-hand turn, and we'll be heading towards Lincoln. So after takeoff checks are basically undercarriage is up and red light or amber light is showing, that's correct. Flaps are up and confirmed. Pitot heat coming off. Auxiliary fuel pump is off. Landing lights are off. And I will join you back when we get towards Lincoln. So welcome back to the flight. We are currently, well, I have set the autopilot. I'm lazy. bit of turbulence today, so the aircraft was getting bounced around a little bit. Something I do believe, I don't know obviously against realistic turbulence levels, but you know, in flight simulator terms, it's a lot better than it used to be. I think FSX days didn't have too much turbulence, but 2020, I should say, as a simulator, the turbulence is actually very realistic for light aircraft, and something that real pilots of general aviation aircraft do have to put up with. So currently approaching the outskirts of Lincoln. This is my home city. Just approaching, flying somewhere near the cathedral. This is the thing that I like about Carenado aircraft. Everything kind of just works. And yes, I know obviously as a paying customer I would like everything to work, but some aircraft skip, or some developers skip, very important parts of the aircraft, and it makes it less realistic to us, the consumer and customer. And I think Carenado do have a place here on the flight sim. As I said at the start of the video, they are the cheaper end of the market when it comes to aircraft. I will put a link obviously to this aircraft on Carenado's page, but it, compared to Just Flight and compared to A2A, there is a price difference. And yes, they probably could do some stuff that is more realistic, they could do things that are better, but I think they do a very good job of providing a varied collection of general aviation aircraft. A few weird aircraft, but they do provide a good collection of aircraft, and as we know on the channel, I do like a good Carenado aircraft. I think on the avionics side they're very adequate. You know, you do have options. If you don't have the 750, the GTN 750 options, you can use the GNS 530. It's perfectly usable. The cockpit is perfectly usable and believable, and you can use this aircraft as a long distance cruiser. Due to the fact of it having folding undercarriage, it uses less fuel than other aircraft, and that is the plus side of this aircraft over standard fixed undercarriage Cessnas. And I do like Carenado. I think that, I know a lot of people have knocked their flight dynamics, for instance. They do tend to maybe copy and paste dynamics here and there. I don't know. I've never spoken to Carenado. I haven't seen how they make their aircraft. But I'd like to use the word believable when it comes to their stuff. I haven't found an aircraft that was like, oh, it's a rocket ship. You know, it increases its speed at a high climb rate when it's a general aviation aircraft and really shouldn't. They are believable. Also, I will say I don't like to cover these kind of subjects on the channel because basically I'm an idiot and I don't really understand too much of it, but I noticed that DLSS 4 has been released in cahoots, whichever one it is. But anyway, alongside the new Nvidia 5000 series of graphics cards. And I have tried it. I am running DLSS 4 preset. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I would love to do a video on this, but I'll just get it all wrong. But basically, it's an improvement of the DLSS options here on the sim, and it has made a difference with me, with my sim. I mean, I don't tend to run DLSS. I do tend to run TAA, which is what I'm using at the moment, and I do get very good results with TAA as it is on my setup. DLSS 4 did make a difference regarding my sim. I did manage to, I'm running at about, when I'm in the air, 60 plus FPS. And like I said, it did make a difference and it does work. Now, I'm not going to say anything towards 2024. I know you guys have had issues regarding getting DLSS 4 and preset K to work. Some people are still suffering from crashes. I know as of this video being made, Nvidia have released a hotfix patch driver. That's what I'm looking for, the word driver. If you're having crashes and stutters, it's apparently supposed to fix that. I haven't used 2024 now for a while, but in 2020 I'm getting fairly good results, and like I say, TAA is working pretty well as it is. So just crossing over RAF Waddington. Again, this is a freeware version available on flightsim.to. Fairly accurate now to what Waddington looks like in reality. Home of the Royal Air Force Red Hours display team. Also home to the RC-135 Joint Rivet reconnaissance aircraft, which I do believe is just sat down there at the moment. If you just see there, that is an RC-135. Waddington was the home of reconnaissance aircraft in the late 90s, early 2000s. We had the E3D AWACS, RC-135 Joint Rivet. We had the Sentinel, I do believe. I can't remember what aircraft that was based off. But we had a multitude of reconnaissance aircraft available to us, all based at RAF Waddington. Not the case nowadays, but we still do have the RC-135. We also have Shadows, which I think can be used in reconnaissance or comment levels, I don't know officially. But like I say, most times it's the RAF Red Hours that are displaying and practicing over RAF Waddington. So that lever was, that little alarm there is me pulling the throttle back a little bit too much. Obviously we have folding undercarriage, something we have to think about. So I am going to start my approach into Waddington, so that's all for landing light can come on, heater heat can come on, auxiliary fuel pump can come on. It's not the throttle lever there. That's going down one stage. Also, I'm using the Honeycomb Alpha and Bravo to fly this aircraft, and a part of the Honeycomb Bravo is the trim wheel, a godsend, I must admit, as opposed to using buttons. Some aircraft don't have a high response rate when it comes to the trim wheel. There's a lot of spinning before any response in the aircraft. I'm happy to say that the response is actually very, very good on this aircraft. We are going to extend our approach, we are quite high. Going down. Retrim.
Get about 100 knots now. Flaps down one stage, landing lights are on, levers are correct. So very easy to land this aircraft nose wheel first. Not something you really want to do due to the way the undercarriage is squat at the rear. So I'll have to remember that on approach. Do have a little bit of turbulence. Touching down somewhere north of 80, about 85, 86. That's 90. Good approach. A little bit low. Don't chop the throttle. Nose coming back, throttle coming back. Holding, holding. Touchdown. Because we know there's no traffic in the area, we are going to backtrack back up the runway and take the first taxiway, which I conveniently missed. On purpose, of course. So there we have the RC-135 joint rivet aircraft. One of two, I want to say, based here at RF Waddington. Fulfills the role of COMINT, I think it's technically called, or Communications Intelligence. Basically, this thing sniffs up various bits of communications and electronics that are across the airwaves. Very good at it as well. And the Americans, also, this aircraft obviously is based off American technology, so there is American versions as well. Not going to take a guess as to where it goes in the world, but it is active today and does fly to various hotspots of the world. So anyway, flaps coming up, landing lights are off, nav lights are on, tax lights are on. And whilst we're giving a little bit of history about RF Waddington, I'll just stop the aircraft. So currently sat over there is the E3Ds. Now, as of this scenery being made, obviously they pick a date as to when they replicate the scenery. Now, unfortunately, the E3D AWACS was being retired at the time, so they was being scrapped. Some aircraft were sold on to Peru, I do believe, but a lot of aircraft, unfortunately, were scrapped. Some would say before time, but Ministry of Defence knows best. Fuel pump coming off. Pitot heat is now off. Flaps are up and confirmed.
ourselves up here on one of the pans. Right, so parking brake is set. Fairly good engine shutdown effect. Really does look, even with the lighting, it looks a really, really good aircraft. So anyway, let's get this aircraft properly shut down. So lights are coming off. Mixture is pulled back. Batteries are off. Power is off. Fuel tanks are set off. So there we are. The Cessna with the folding undercarriage. Where does it fit in the flight simulator? Well, obviously it fits in very well in my flight simulator. I like general aviation aircraft. But the Cessna 182RG2 is a Cessna with a little bit different. Like I say, folding undercarriage allows it to fly faster, allows it to fly more fuel efficiently, because the undercarriage is a very, how can I put it, dirty arrangement. Having fixed undercarriage does lead to less range, less speed. But the Cessna here, the 182 RG2, having the folding undercarriage arrangement, is actually really, really good. And I do like the fact that, yes, there was a few Cessnas out there on the flight simulator market, but Cessnas like this with folding undercarriage is something different, and Carenado do something different. Now, like I said, they do also, they have the Skymaster, I want to call it, I think Skymaster 337, it's Skymaster for sure, which technically is a twin-engined aircraft. I will feature it in the channel. It's sat on my flight simulator now. That also has folding undercarriage and, like I say, a weird arrangement of engines. But like I say, that will feature in the channel in the future. Do I recommend this Cessna? Yes, I do. It's as good as other Carenado aircraft, and that's saying, you know, something really good, because Carenado, like I say, do provide some really, really good aircraft. I think this aircraft does fit in quite well with the scenery and the flight simulator. I do believe, don't quote me on it, it is available for Flight Simulator 2024, but if you go on the link that I will post below in the description, you'll know for sure, because it'll be carenado.com. Or Carenado's website. So if you have any questions or comments regarding the Cessna C182 RG2, please bang them below. You want to talk about it, feel free. I will quite happily talk Cessna all day long, and I will see you, guys and girls, in a future Microsoft Flight Simulator video very, very soon.